lot has happened in the hydrogen and fuel cell electric bus sector since the CUTA conference in 2020. I'm Bob Patton, past CUTA board chair and transit agency executive. I'm now a senior counsel with National Public Relations. It's my pleasure to again moderate today's CUTA session on hydrogen and fuel cell electric buses. Over the last year, the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association has interviewed many transit leaders, and today we want to respond to your key concerns about supply and pricing. We also want to provide an update on the important policy developments that have occurred. Mark Kirby, the president and CEO of the association, is also the co-chair of the Strategic Steering Committee for the Hydrogen Strategy for Canada. He'll lead off the discussion and address some of the prominent issues. Mark has been a champion for the industry for many years, and with his new role on the committee, he will play a key role in achieving successful implementation of the federal strategy.
Hi, I'm here with a fuel cell vehicle, and I'm just going to show you how easy it is to fill this up with hydrogen. So stand by and we'll see how it goes. So as per normal, need my credit card. All right, so now I take my nozzle out, very much like a normal nozzle. Open up the cap. And here, simply take the nozzle and press it on. There. Touch to start fueling. And there it is. It's sitting there starting to do its filling. You can hear it slightly hissing as the gas goes in. What we have here is there's high pressure hydrogen that's being stored out back behind the service bay over there, and it's brought over to this regular pump. As you can see, there's cars all around us here filling up their cars. Really nothing special about this pump other than it's filling hydrogen. And this is very much the way it would be if you were filling any other type of vehicle. Of course, the nozzles would be bigger and they have a higher flow rate, but in general would behave in exactly the same way. And should be done pretty quickly as well. Saying we're 70% full. You know, the hydrogen here is brought in by a truck from a plant in Surrey. It's clean hydrogen made with good BC Hydro clean power. And of course the car here will produce no emissions at all other than pure water out of the tailpipe. Been driving this one around for quite some time, and really it's been a joy to drive. It's just like driving any other type of electric vehicle. You know, it's got good acceleration, it's quiet, and the nice thing about it is I've been going back and forth to up to Squamish with my daughter, and you know, come back here and we can top it back up in a matter of minutes. And that's it. Fueling complete. And I take this off. That's finished up. I put the cap back on, hooks are up, and I'm done. So we just finished filling the car up out front, and this behind me here is where the hydrogen actually is stored and comes from. There's high pressure containers back there, cylinders, and a cooling system, and then it's piped over and to the dispensing pump out front. So we just came from fueling the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, and that really encapsulates the benefits of fuel cells because we were able to fuel that in a matter of minutes. Now, if you're somebody that can take your car to your home and charge it up, and you have a battery electric vehicle, that may not be important to you. You can charge it at your office, you can charge it elsewhere. But if you're somebody that perhaps is driving in a fleet, like a taxi or a service vehicle or an emergency vehicle, then that ability to get that car fueled and back on the road may be really important to you. Or it might be that you are a truck driver, in which case your driver productivity, your range, and your ability not to be having to lug around heavy batteries might also be really important. And for those types of applications, that's where fuel cells really can shine. And taking that to transit agencies, in some cases the same thing applies. In some cases it's going to make sense to be able to get the bus back on the road quickly, to be able to maximize the payload, to be able to have that resilience to shift routes or use it where it needs to be used. And that's the reason why fuel cells are attracting a lot of attention in Canada and internationally, and why many transit agencies are starting to look at them as part of their fleet. Canadian governments recognize that. They've recognized that hydrogen fuel cells also fit into many other areas, whether that's in heating, industrial processing, or transportation. And as a result, they set up the hydrogen strategy for Canada. And they put in place recommendations for policy, recommendations for what we need to do in communications, in developing hubs, and many other ways to help drive hydrogen through. And one of the key parts is setting up working groups. These are industry, government, collaborative groups that'll work together to identify, well, what are the challenges in, let's say, the trucking sector, or the marine shipping sector, or the mining sector, or the transit area. And we're very honored as the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association to be co-chairing the transit working group, and it's been a really interesting experience. It's been running for about 9 months now, and we've been able to get out and really talk with the transit agencies and with the municipalities to understand, what do they know about fuel cells today? What are their concerns? What are their worries? What are their needs in terms of electrifying their fleets? And it's been interesting to watch that progression over just the past 9 months of that increase in awareness of the role that fuel cells might play. And so the working group has started working with the municipalities, with the engineering and service companies to identify, put together a game plan, what's needed. And what we're hearing is that there's a real need for communications. There still is a dearth of information out there. People are eager to find out what's going on around the world, where are fuel cells being deployed, how they're working, what's the performance. They're interested in a database of information where they can go and get data about performance of fuel cells, performance of hydrogen systems, etc. They're interested in making sure that that appropriate codes and standards and training are in place, but also that they can look at, how do I buy fuel cell vehicles? Where are they available? What can we do to make them more affordable? What support is needed from the government to make them more affordable? Same thing for hydrogen. Most transit agencies aren't that familiar with buying hydrogen, so where can they get it? Is it indeed clean? And what does it take to get that on site and to get a fueling station in place? And so we're really trying to see what we can do to pull together those recommendations, work with industry and government to start putting in place an action plan that will address those concerns, and all with the intention that fuel cells become a very, very viable and an important part of electrification of transit agencies.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the update. Mark has noted that there is a strategy emerging that will enable the Canadian transit industry to learn more about fuel cell electric buses and determine how they may fit in the zero-emission bus fleets of the future. Up next, it's my pleasure to facilitate a discussion with some of Canada's foremost transit experts, who will each speak to important studies about fuel cell electric buses and offer suggestions on what agencies may wish to consider over the long term as they move to zero-emission fleets. Our first speaker is Erin Cook. She is project manager for Winnipeg Transit's bus electrification program. Erin has been leading the program since 2019, and before that, she was part of New Flyer's new product development team. Erin, last decade, Winnipeg Transit conducted a successful battery electric bus demonstration project. Why did Winnipeg Transit decide to do further studies and undertake comprehensive trials with several zero-emission bus technologies, including fuel cell electric buses?
Thanks, Bob. That's a great question. Winnipeg Transit did complete a battery electric bus trial when we had over 4 years of operation on the road. The trial was really developed around developing the technology of the buses and less on how to integrate the technology into fleet operations. So building upon the lessons learned from our 4-year trial, earlier this year we released our Transition to Zero-Emission Technical Evaluation Report. After comparing the environmental impact, technical performance, and cost of transitioning to zero-emission buses, we determined that a fleet that's mixed with both battery electric and fuel cell battery electric may be necessary for Winnipeg Transit. Later this year, we plan on releasing our zero-emission bus rollout plan, which will define a strategy for moving the city towards a zero-emission future, including fleet replacement schedule, facility infrastructure needs, program risk identification, as well as long-term cost forecasting. Going into the study, we were aware of the technology challenges related to the buses, but we were not fully aware how complicated the transition to zero emission would be. The most powerful tool at our disposal was our schedule, and while schedules can be adjusted to work within the limitations of the buses, some decisions on electrification are driven by external factors, such as power limitations at our buildings that can't easily be changed. Just as each technology had pros and cons, each city will have unique challenges and opportunities to consider. In our case, we believe that more than one technology will be needed to fully transition our fleet to zero emission. Earlier this year, Winnipeg Transit applied to the provincial and federal government for funding to purchase up to 105 zero-emission buses. While our feasibility study predicts a mix of 70% battery electric and 30% fuel cell electric buses, we don't feel that the full impact of the transition to zero-emission buses can be fully quantified in a report. We feel it's essential to run a 12 to 18-month head-to-head trial with both types of buses in both 40-foot and 60-foot configurations, evaluating each based on cost, performance and reliability, operational impact, and user experience. We want to really understand the technology barriers as well as the systemic changes needed to transform Winnipeg Transit from a diesel bus operator to a zero-emission bus operator before fully committing to a fleet mix. The greatest plans on paper unfortunately do not always work in practice. Winnipeg Transit currently has 2 buildings on the same utility feeder, and that feeder cannot support adding more than 3 megawatts of additional power currently. Unfortunately, the estimated power to support a fully battery electric facility is close to 12 megawatts. Increasing utility powers to the levels needed may not be possible, and adding solar generation or battery backup power only gets us partway there. Fuel cell buses or en route charge buses may need to make up a larger percentage of our fleet than planned, regardless of whether they are the lowest cost solution. Having experience with all 3 technologies will provide us the data and experience needed to confidently adjust our fleet mix if necessary as our fleet expands. We know that it will not be as easy as replacing a diesel bus with a zero-emission bus 1-for-1. Range limitations mean some existing runs will need to be split. Splitting runs means more buses, more drivers, and higher operating costs. Battery electric buses have the shortest range of all zero-emission buses and therefore are the most at risk for fleet expansion. Once you factor in variations for fleet size amongst the technology and infrastructure complexity, all zero-emission buses end up with similar life cycle costs. Fuel cell buses could end up being the cheapest or most expensive option depending on the price of fuel. Sourcing hydrogen at $4 per kg needed to be cost competitive with battery electric is currently only possible with on-site production, and not with the delivered fuel that we would need to work around the power limitations at our existing facilities. Because of this, our study predicted depot charge buses to still be the lowest cost option, which is why they make up the largest percentage of our fleet mix. And planning to restrict the buses to only the longest, most challenging runs that aren't easily electrified will help control the cost. While battery electric buses initially appear to have cost advantages, many of these cost advantages disappear with the complexity of scaling up the technology. Fuel cell buses have operational advantages such as fast fueling, flexible scheduling, fleet resiliency, and winter performance improvements that can't easily be quantified and do help improve the business case for fuel cell buses. When you consider the things that are important to your transit agency, you may find, like we did, that fuel cell buses are actually a better fit than battery electric, with the only barrier being cost. Each transit agency will need to decide for themselves which technology is right for their operations. I look forward to sharing the results of our trial in the future. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any further questions.
Aaron, I'm sure the transit industry will be following closely the work that you are doing, and will be looking forward to your final report. Thanks for the excellent presentation. Many CUTA members are directly involved with CUTRIC or follow its work closely. The Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium is a socially responsible non-profit organization that spearheads, designs, and launches technology and commercialization projects that advance next-generation zero-carbon mobility and transportation solutions across Canada. It also develops low-cost simulation tools that help transit agencies across Canada and the United States predict how their electric buses, fuel cell buses, and autonomous smart vehicles will operate in real time on roads and in service. Simon Bavsar is project manager for the Pan-Canadian Hydrogen Fuel Cell Electric Bus Demonstration and Integration Trial. CUTRIC is partnering with My Way in Mississauga to conduct a feasibility study on fuel cell electric buses. The first phase of that work is now underway. Simon, please tell us about the predictive modeling tool that CUTRIC has developed over the past few years and how this tool is being deployed in phase one of the project.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for the introduction, mine and CUTRIC's as well. Another thing to add about CUTRIC, so we do have 4 commercialization projects, and I'll be speaking about CUTRIC's Pan-Canadian Hydrogen Fuel Cell Electric Bus Demonstration and Integration Trial here today. So let's delve a bit into the journey that we've been through. Well, as Bob mentioned, we've been through 4 years of consultation and working group sessions. These consultation and working group sessions involved CUTRIC's transit, academia, and industry members, and we've essentially scoped, planned, and budgeted a demonstration and integration trial through this project, process. We also rationalized basically the need to deploy fuel cell electric buses at transit agencies in different parts of the country, especially in collaboration with some of our member transit agencies such as Toronto Transit Corporation or York Region Transit or Brampton or ultimately Mississauga Transit, My Way, who were involved in these consultation and working group sessions. While these working group and consultation sessions were underway, what was the Mississauga context and what was happening at the City of Mississauga? Well, the rationale for fuel cell electric bus deployment was also under evolution at My Way. And so, seeing the city's ambitious commitment to climate action, we have now the city has now decided to urgently decarbonize its transit fleet. The city's transit fleet currently comprises of almost 470 diesel buses, and so the City of Mississauga and especially Mississauga Transit, My Way, is now underway to plan out a full fleet decarbonization. As part of its plans, My Way in 2019 conducted a study to assess the feasibility of decarbonizing its fleet using battery electric buses. Specifically, the study assessed charging infrastructure, real estate, electricity, and facility upgrade requirements. Was My Way to decarbonize its fleet using battery electric buses? A lot of challenges were realized, especially associated with energy procurement, that is electricity procurement, and also real estate at the depots and on the on-street real estate at My Way. Having realized these challenges, in the meantime, My Way also collaborated with CUTRIC and other members at CUTRIC to assess if fuel cell electric buses could fill certain gaps when it comes to complementing fleet electrification using battery electric buses. And so, as part of these working group sessions with CUTRIC, predictive modeling was undertaken for some specific routes to really understand if fuel cell electric buses could really cater to these routes or even certain blocks at My Way. Ultimately, based on these assessments, fuel cell electric buses were considered to be fit to decarbonize the fleet at My Way, not only efficiently using a smaller footprint of infrastructure for fueling, but also by catering efficiently to certain blocks and routes. Ultimately, I'd say Mississauga today has established a fuller understanding of the need to deploy fuel cell buses and is now undertaking a full fleet modeling to really understand full fleet decarbonization using fuel cell buses as well. What has this entire 3 to 4 year process taught us, and where has it led us to? As of the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, My Way, as the champion transit agency, has collaborated with other members at CUTRIC to kickstart to kickstart the procurement process and the fund structuring for a fuel cell electric bus demonstration and integration trial. And so we plan to deploy 10 fuel cell buses along with a local green hydrogen supply chain supported by industry members at CUTRIC such as Enbridge and Cummins, as well as New Fly and Ballard Power Systems. While we're undertaking a predictive modeling study, this particular project has also begun finalizing procurement specs, and we're also in the process of assessing funding opportunities, including opportunities from the Zero-emissions transit funding program that recently opened, and also other federal programs available to explore. So what has all this process taught us today? Well, first of all, we've learned that a certain configuration works for the city of Mississauga and for MyWay. As part of this project, we'll be using a delivered fuel model wherein fuel will be supplied from a centralized electrolysis facility. Green hydrogen will be supplied by Enbridge Cummins from a centralized facility, which, by the way, will also support a long-term fueling infrastructure at the MyWay facility wherein the buses will operate. This will also be the first instance where buses will be parked outdoors in North America, and fuel cell buses will also be tested in harsh winter conditions in Canada. And so some of these features of the project will really help other transit agencies in Canada understand the reliability of operating fuel cell electric buses on Canadian soil. And such a project will also help other agencies in Canada understand the technical and commercial realities of operating these buses in contrast with battery electric buses or other alternative fuel technologies or diesel buses themselves. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any more questions you may have about details when it comes to operating fleets using fuel cell electric buses. I'd be happy to connect you to my colleague at MyWay, who'll be managing the transit operations side of this particular project. Thank you again, Bob, for the opportunity to present, and thank you to CUTA for the opportunity as well. I look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks again.
Thanks, Samya. This feasibility study will be followed closely, as other transit agencies may want to adopt a similar methodology to support their planning for transition to zero-emission bus fleets. Our final panelist is no stranger to many of our country's fleet and asset managers. Naeem Farouk is Director of Sustainable Transportation and Asset Management for Wood, and currently serves as Chair of CUTA's Maintenance and Vehicle Technology Subcommittee. Naeem, what suggestions do you have for transit agencies regarding the studies they should undertake to plan their transition to zero-emission bus fleets?
Thank you, Bob, for that question. It's actually a really good point that studies and analysis are great ways to understand the gaps and challenges and opportunities that will emerge when you actually look to deploy zero-emission vehicles. One way that I like looking at these studies is actually breaking them into 5 major themes. The first being people, the mechanics, the drivers, making sure that they're given the right training and support needed to maintain and operate these vehicles. For the environment standpoint of mapping out the emissions of the various types of hydrogen, green, blue, or gray being deployed. In terms of infrastructure, making sure there's enough power coming to the site for electrolysis purposes, developing the dispenser system or network needed to fuel the fleet. And then on the fleet size, choosing the right size of tanks, as well as configuring the vehicle for maintenance purposes and ease of operation. And then lastly, facility. In the facility side, you want to understand what changes need to be made to your building because you're dealing with a different type of propulsion fluid that would have a different impact in how, in terms of safety, your building would operate. So just some modifications are needed. So in that study, you should be looking at things like that. You should be answering questions of range. How far can these vehicles operate? How will they perform in your respective climates and duty cycles? And from there, you take that information and you can build, a triple bottom line analysis for people, planet, and profit, understanding, what exactly will be the total impact of that transition, and building out a forecast of 10, 15, 25 years of an adoption strategy and getting an NPV is a great way. So that's how we work with our respective clients, and we use our proprietary tools like the Zero-emission Simulator and the Zero-emission Simulator 360, which provides you a triple ball line financial pro forma of your adoption scenario, and it shows you what the trade-offs are of your respective decisions. As this technology is rolling out in other geographies, we're actually getting great lessons learned, and one of those is coming out of California, where we're seeing that a recent study where 19 transit agencies have been looking at electric, and pilots at various stages have come back and now incorporated 10 of them have incorporated hydrogen as part of the solution. And one of the rationales behind that is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Evaluating both zero-emission technologies is critical to mapping your own transition. They each come with their pros and cons, and it really depends on your operation. So in some cases, it's not a either or. It could be a complementary service where 50-60% of it's on battery electric, and that last portion is on hydrogen. So that's something to think about. And the other thing is, doing a study is a desktop exercise. We're taking in that data, we're crunching it, we're getting the intelligence and insights from your information and mapping it out. But doing putting one foot into the water and just getting a sort of flavor of the situation is really done with a good pilot, a well-defined pilot. And I would recommend, as you're moving from a study to deployment, doing a pilot of a limited run of vehicles and understanding, what actually works well, where areas need to be improved. And then you get a better idea of, what kind of hydrogen do you even want coming on site? Do you want to produce it on site, or do you want to bring it in? So those are some of the things that a good pilot will teach you. And, it's important to understand that some people have said to me in the past that, hydrogen pilots are hard and expensive because they have to invest in the fueling infrastructure. We've made great strides in the last decade around hydrogen temporary refueling, and I would encourage members and people on this webinar to actually look at the technologies out there. There's a lot of good solutions for temporary refueling. You don't have to be alone on this journey. You can actually access the CUTA learning program. We have a course for natural gas and hydrogen business case development for respective transit agencies. So I would encourage you to reach out to learning@cutaocta.ca to learn more about the course and when it's being offered next. It's a 5-week course that teaches you from zero understanding of hydrogen and natural gas all the way to how do you build your business case inside your organization to help you move forward your zero emissions vehicle ambition.
Thanks, Nadine. Great suggestions for the industry. Our keynote speaker and our panelists have provided a great overview of government policy and also details about studies that will help inform future decision-making within the transit industry on the journey to zero-emission bus fleets. This is one of many information sessions that will occur in the months ahead as the Hydrogen Urban Transit Working Group advances its work in Canada. We hope you will stay engaged through future collaboration and consultation opportunities. To learn more about policy and fuel cell electric buses, please visit chfca.ca. Thanks for being part of today's discussion.